Hi guys, it's Kate here, and I have missed making videos. It's been about 2 weeks since I filmed something, and it's simply because I've been so busy reading. So I have lots to talk about. I'm planning on filming several videos today, and just looking forward to being back to making videos. And as you can see, yesterday we missed Period Drama Monday. I was just a little behind, and I figured I'll just have a week off, and I want this to be a fun thing for me to do, so Period Drama Monday will be back to its usual period drama self on next Monday. So the video I'm making today I'm very excited for, and I know I've talked about it several times, and that is the 10 reasons you should read mysteries. So I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be kind of long because I was able to come up with a lot, and I hope you have a cozy place to go. You might be able to tell from the lighting. It's pretty rainy outside right now, so I'm feeling very cozy and looking forward to talking to all of you about mysteries and hopefully getting more people to read mysteries. So I will just jump right into it. And the first reason that you should read mysteries is that mysteries can be very comforting. There is a mystery historian, actually. They're, scholars who study the genre of mystery because it's fascinating to study. Howard Haycroft, and he found that during the Nazi bombings of London, during World War II, that the most popular genre being read were actually mysteries. So I know that for me as an adult, that the world can be a very scary place and an unsure place and an unsafe place and just lots of troubling things happening. I know there's nothing better to me than picking up another Armand Gamache mystery and seeing him go back to the sleepy town of Three Pines. It's in a rural part of Quebec, and it's just one of the coziest things. Or returning to my favorite mystery series to date, and that is Inspector Wexford by Ruth Rendell, and going back to Kings Markham, which is a fictional suburb of London. And it's not really the suburb that stands out. It's not formed as that unique, but it's Inspector Wexford and his wife Dora, who he's hopelessly in love with, and his assistant Inspector Burden, and his wife and children, and Inspector Wexford has 2 daughters that are grown, and so it's just really comforting to me, just kind of like their lives have been on hold the whole time I've been away, and then I come back and I see what's new with them. So it's very comforting to me to read those. The second reason that you should read mysteries is that they are formulaic in a very good way. Typically in mysteries, they start out and you see a brief introduction to each of the characters, including the future victim, and they're made to look either extra detestable, and you know why they're such a target and why the end is coming for them soon, or they're made to look actually extra innocent, and then the killer, who is anonymous typically at the beginning of the story, is made to look extra sinister and evil. And so you meet all of the characters, and then the murder happens by an anonymous murderer, and then we move on from there. Some kind of law force is called in, or even a private detective working with the law, and they are figuring out how it was done. Occasionally, from the beginning, the audience knows who the murderer is, and they're watching the sleuth figure it out from the end. And then also occasionally, if you watch the TV series Monk at all, Monk is actually a private inspector, and he's hired with the police a lot as a consultant. And a lot of times from the beginning, you know who the murderer is, you know how they did it. Monk even knows who the murderer is, but he doesn't know how to prove it. So more the tension is him proving how it was done. But so there's this formula where you meet the character, someone is murdered, then people find out all of the details, and a lot of times secrets come out about other characters in it during the course of the investigation, and then at the end the killer is brought to justice. It's this very reliable formula in many, many different types of mysteries that you read. Another thing that is pretty consistent with these is the setting is really unique and often picturesque. So taking place at a vacation home or a really big, beautiful mansion. Sometimes the setting isn't as picturesque, but I think kind of the demographic of people that read mysteries kind of like those types of things, those types of settings. It's sort of a paradox, there's this really beautiful picturesque setting, historical buildings and everything really beautiful, and then this tragedy happens, this really evil, dark thing happening against this beautiful setting, which makes it very interesting. So I love this about mysteries personally because I know what I'm getting. Even as I try new series, like this month I read the Bess Crawford series where she's a World War One nurse and she ends up solving murders, you know, when she's not working as a nurse, or how I'm reading right now the Flavia de Luce series. I'm reading the first one in that, The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie, and it's about this 12-year-old girl who is solving murders, and she is solving them using a lot of chemistry, and I love that. Even though those are two really different types of sleuths, I'm still getting the basics, the basic setting for it. And kind of an example I thought of, this is kind of unusual, but hopefully it hits home with you. My favorite food ever is French fries. I absolutely love French fries. I never get tired of them. Absolutely ever. Now, my favorite French fries come from McDonald's. If they're done freshly, that's where I think they are the most tasty. But I love French fries so much that I will order French fries happily wherever I go. If I go to a diner or if I go to Chick-fil-A or Wendy's, I know that it has the same three basic things. It's just potatoes cut up, fried in oil with a lot of salt on them, and I love that basis. And so since I love the basic formula for a mystery, I know that there's lots of different mysteries that I can read, so I can have some variety in there, like Bess Crawford or Flavia de Luce is very different than other sleuths like Hercule Poirot or Inspector Wexford, like I was talking about earlier, but knowing that there's the same basic setup there, and it makes it really reliable and something that I know I'll be interested in with lots of different ones. So there is this huge variety, though, in the setups and the sleuths, and that's very comforting to me. But then this also leads to the next point, which is the variety in the setups and the sleuths. This is something that I think should make mysteries really appealing to you. I think there's something there for everyone, no matter what you're interested in. I think you can find a mystery that you would love. Just to list a few of the different sleuths, I talked about Flavia de Luce earlier. I think the fact of her being a child makes her interesting, and a female makes her unique and different from a lot of sleuths that are out there. And then Bess Crawford is somebody from a different time period than us, which makes that interesting, and also serving during a really terrible time for our world. And so that's a unique kind of sleuth to see and not maybe your typical one. Then a very light-hearted one is the Freddy the Pig series. This is by Walter Brooks, and it was written from the 1930s to the 1950s. And in some of them, including Freddy the Detective, he solves kind of everyday things, like one of the ducks can't find one of their belongings, and so Freddy has to retrace their steps and find them. That's a really light-hearted example. And then Inspector Wexford that I talked about, in addition to the details I gave you, he also loves literature, and several times Jane Austen is referenced, which you know that I love, and that's neat. And then also a thing that is special about him is that he's reading so much that in a fair number of the books, a book that he's reading helps him think of something or jogs his memory for a case that he's been working on and helps him solve that. Another detective is Armand Gamache that I talked about earlier. He is a detective in Quebec, and this little town that has a good fair number of French Canadians. And so that's an interesting setting that I haven't read much in Canada, much less French Canada. And so it's very interesting just to see that, and all the politics. They go into the history of, you know, Quebecois and all of that. So it's very interesting to see that. Another very famous detective is Sherlock Holmes, and he has kind of this superhuman intellect that is just amazing to watch him solve crimes. And personally, he's not one of my favorites just because I think he's what I would call emotionally constipated, and I just feel like you don't get to know him as a person at all. You just get to know his mind but not his heart, and so that's kind of hard for me when I'm reading those, but they're still really fascinating mysteries and very well crafted. Another really unique detective is Miss Marple. The Miss Marple series is another one that was written by Agatha Christie, and she is this little petite old lady, and people don't take her seriously because she's an old woman, and so she ends up getting all of this information that people wouldn't give anyone else, but because they feel like they can talk to her, and then she ends up solving mysteries and they're totally blindsided because they had no idea she was listening that much, and they just think of her as kind of crazy and absent-minded. And another fun detail about her is that she's constantly knitting and making presents for people, which I think is really fun. And then another one that's really unique is the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. And this takes place in Botswana, and I hope to get to one of these series very soon because there's a fair number in the series and I just love to try it out. And this is unique, of course, because it's in Botswana. I have read, I could say, on one hand easily, books that take place in Africa, so this would be an interesting one to get to. And then another one that comes to mind is Sydney Chambers, and I don't know how many of you have heard of the Grantchester miniseries, but this is just a miniseries taken from these books. And Sydney Chambers is a vicar who ends up just through the course of kind of strange events helping and assisting a detective in the town and helping him solve murders. And because he is a priest, people feel comfortable talking to him and telling him things about their life. They see him as kind of a neutral party. So those are interesting things. But then another aspect I feel like I should talk about, telling you about all of these, and those are just a few of the many, many detectives out there. And there are hundreds of series out there. It's just, you're just dipping your toes in with what I'm telling you about. But our cozy mysteries, and cozy mysteries basically follow the format that they take place at a picturesque location, oftentimes a small town, and oftentimes a place where people vacation, and the characters in it are people that you could view as people you would like to be friends with. And they often have puns in the titles, and these are very popular, I think, a lot of times for vacation reads, just because they are really never longer than 300 pages, so they're a very easy thing to dip in and out of. Just a great vacation read. And you would be surprised at how many different subjects there are addressed in this. I will link a website down below called cozymystery.com, and there are all sorts of different settings and sleuths. There is a veterinarian sleuth, there is a bookstore mystery, a book club mystery, card game mysteries, golfing mysteries, cooking mysteries, fairy tale mysteries, and two of the titles I saw were Cinderella, 6 Feet Under, and Snow White, Red-Handed. So I think if you just want something really easy and lighthearted to read, these are not going to be great feats of literature, but you know what? We all have our relaxing reads that we do, so this could be a fun one, especially for vacation, just to kind of dip in and out of. The fourth reason you should read mysteries, just thinking about it financially, is that they are cheaper books. For some reason, even to this day, mysteries are not thought of as literature. They're not taken as seriously, and I'm hoping that over time, gradually, more and more, that will change. Mysteries have to have their own awards. They're the Agatha Awards, and that would be a great resource if you're looking for something to start with. You could look up, there's just years and years of the Agatha Awards, and so kind of to find some really quality, maybe newer mysteries, as opposed to classic mysteries if you aren't really interested in those. But a classic author that I think everyone will recommend you to go to is Agatha Christie, and then Dorothy Sayers is another good one. Personally, the Golden Age mysteries aren't really my speed, simply because I feel like you don't really get to know the people in it, you just have the mystery. But if you like that, if you just like having the puzzle, then I think those are a great resource to go to. The fifth reason you should read mysteries is that they are a great study into human nature. Why? Why would someone take someone else's life? Mysteries have a way of letting you see people more raw than you'll ever see them. There are certain people who can have a certain facade and have that up very easily, but then when there's a tragedy like a murder that happens with a family or a friend that is close to them, it's hard for them to keep up that facade. And the sleuths in the story really have to work to knock down the different walls that people have. And oftentimes, secrets that people were hoping would never be found out end up coming out. You know, children that they hadn't told people that they had, affairs they hadn't told people about, money laundering, just all sorts of crazy stuff that people thought they could hide forever. But then with a murder, this happens, and then you just really see people in a way that you might not be able to in any other type of book. It's really fascinating just to kind of analyze human nature and also analyze the murder. Why did they do this? The what is interesting, yes, but as you read more mysteries, you're going to want to know, why would someone do this, and kind of get into their motivations, which can be a scary place to read sometimes. So depending on the mystery you have, they might delve deeply or they might not. And a sleuth is just a whole other kind of superhero, not like Batman or Superman, much more subdued. But their job, their way to be a hero is to get people to tell the truth. You really can't force people to tell the truth. And so it's their job to try to get people to do that. and hopefully bring justice to the killer. The sixth reason that you should read mysteries is the different eras and countries that mysteries take place in. There is such a variety of not only authors, but also the settings, the places that they happen, but also the era that they happen in, that you can learn a lot about something that you may not have known as much about. And a good resource if you're interested in the medieval times is the Ellis Peters Brother Cadfael series. This is about a monk who solves murders, and he lives in a monastery. So that alone makes it very unique, but I also really enjoyed getting to learn more about life in a monastery and what exactly it's like. And then another one is Inspector Wexford. I know I mentioned him several times already, but a thing I didn't talk about before was Ruth Rendell was quite the social activist, and she comments on this a lot in her books. She talks about feminism and gender roles, and also just different cruelties that are done around the world that should not be done, including female circumcision. This is addressed in one of her books. It happens to one of the characters, and so that's something, if you're really interested in learning about feminism more and kind of the different types of feminism, this is a really interesting read. And then also I mentioned the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. If you're more interested to learn what Botswana is like, that would be a great and fun way to learn more about that. And then another author that I always learn something about in her books is Louise Penny. And her Armand Gamache is not only very literate, but he's also very cultured. And there are certain things I learned about in history and art that I wouldn't have known about otherwise, such as ley lines. I didn't even know what those were before I read one of her books. And then also the Burghers of Calais. It is a statue that's done based on a historical event, and I will link the Wikipedia page down below. That is a very, very interesting and tragic story. And so I think that was just something that made that mystery really interesting to me, and something I probably would not have heard about otherwise. The seventh reason that you should read mysteries is that there is great writing to be read out there in the mystery genre. Like I said earlier, I don't know why this writing is kind of not taken as seriously, because I think it really should be. And the 3 authors that I recommend to everyone, as the best mystery writers are P.D. James, Louise Penny, and Ruth Rendell. It's literature to me. It's great, fabulous writing. Yes, you're going to have, your cozies out there, which are fun, but I wouldn't necessarily call great feats of literature, but I genuinely believe that these ladies that I just listed are great writers. The 8th reason that you should read mysteries is that mysteries are a great way to get out of a reading slump. I think people don't think of turning to these a lot, but I think they're great because they are often, at most, they're going to be 500 pages, but often between 300 and 400 pages. So it's a shorter read. It's not something really long you have to leap into. You get to know the characters right away. It's not an ambiguous thing. You know what's going to happen. Someone's going to be killed and the murder is going to be solved. Pretty reliable and easy for you to jump right into, and just kind of a quick read. You can take a month to read one if you wanted to, but really you could read it easily in 2 or 3 days. And I really just think whenever I am in a reading slump, a mystery is my first choice, because simply it's so easy to jump into. And every single time I'm kind of in a reading slump and I pick up a mystery, I think, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I'm reading this. It's just such a refreshing way to get out of a reading slump, and it's like an after dinner mint. I'm just always so happy that I've read them. The 9th reason that you should read mysteries is the length. You heard me mention earlier that at most they are 500 pages, but typically they are closer to 300 or 400 pages. And this is just simply a nice, easier, quicker read to have. It's not going to be a huge time investment, so that is nice to know that you're not gambling a lot of your reading time on it. But then if you do love it, typically most mysteries are part of a series, so then you have ones you can just go back to and get to know those characters more again. And the 10th reason that you should read mysteries is that it is a world in which everything is set right. I mentioned earlier, the world that we live in can be a very scary place sometimes, and so I just love reading a mystery where I know the killer is going to be brought to justice. I know we've all heard those stories about a body being found and them having no idea who the killer is, no trace of the killer or how they were murdered, how the victim was murdered, and so that's a very sad thing that does happen a fair amount. But in books that you read, justice is always done. Good always overcomes evil. And that is a beautiful thing to see. These people who have dedicated their lives for the greater good and bringing people to justice. And it's a really hard thing, like I said, getting people to tell the truth and digging up the truth in a case that could be otherwise ambiguous. And so I just think it's a beautiful thing to see people really wanting the world to be a better place. So I hope you all have enjoyed this video, and I had a lot of fun thinking about it and making it and filming it. And please let me know if you end up reading any mysteries because of this video. I think the mystery genre is probably the least read on BookTube, so I'm hoping maybe to kind of spread the mystery love on BookTube and hopefully get more people to read it. If you feel like you're really at a loss for where to start with mysteries, if you would like, you could link your Goodreads profile down below, and I'd be happy to take a look and try to recommend one for you. And so hopefully that might get you started with reading mysteries. So I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you for watching as always. I really appreciate it, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye-bye.